Welcome, everybody. We're in the Invincible Innovation Live show, and it's a show about people, innovation, and tech. I'm Mazor, Kario, innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me Erik Van Ommeren, innovation expert, who was a senior director and analyst at Gartner. Hi, Erik.
Hey there. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we talked in the past, and I'm sure it's going to be so interesting. So I'm happy that you are here. So let's start, tell about yourself. How did you become this innovation expert? What's your point of view of innovation from your experience?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I started as a lowly junior programmer fiddling with technology in the early days of the internet. And then I was always on the innovative side of technology, and every wave of new technology came along, and I always analyzed it, wrote about it, and examined how that change in technology was adopted into organizations and then into society. So over the years, I've seen every time you drop something new into an organization, they respond in a certain way. And so over time, I started to see the patterns, what works, what doesn't work. And that sort of formed this holistic framework of innovation. How do organizations innovate? And it's no longer about technology, but it's about ideas and change and positive change. And in the right. Meanwhile, you've seen that the word innovation has gone through a bit of a hype itself. So 20 years ago, innovation, we talked about agility and we talked about business value. We didn't talk about innovation per se. And now we talk about innovation, and having innovation in your job title is the best thing ever. Nobody cares what you do. As long as innovation is in your job title, it's good. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we are now. It's that we're examining innovation as a profession by itself. And that means we're making great strides in examining how does it work? What are the barriers? How can we do things better? But also, when doesn't it make sense to do certain things?
Yeah, I think that what you're saying about starting from the technology, you see that most tech companies started from a technology, and today most startups that I work with, they don't have only the CTO. They have someone from business, they have someone from marketing, from UX, so forth. So the trend of not taking technology as the focal point or the start point is the same. And I think it means that we are becoming more human in a sense, because we know that the soft skills are even more important sometimes than what we think. And it's not only technology or the numbers that we're thinking.
Yeah, and technology has always been an extension of man. So we use technology to extend who we are and what we do. It's just that we now recognize that technology has a dynamic of its own that influences our behavior and our thoughts and our society. So all the discussions about privacy and security and what does Facebook do and how does it influence politics and what does it mean when there's a global crisis? What is the role of technology in that? Those are really big questions, because we've now created this world where technology and the trends and innovations in technology influence daily lives. So suddenly it's a much more intricate system where one feeds into the other, and hopefully it feeds back as well.
Yeah, you're right. I think that we understand that it's it's more complex in a sense, because in the past, people had maybe computers in their work, or maybe they could meet it somewhere in their daily lives. But today it's it's part of our daily life. It's what we're doing most of our free time and at work. So it's always connected to us. And what has passed, in the past, people say, okay, when we need something, we will use a computer for it. But now it's all connected. Even things like HR, which are very, very related to soft skills, are being done with AI and with technology. So it's two parts working together and not one part and we're after it. And you see,
but it's also, I believe that we thought that the majority of the transformation is behind us. And I believe the majority of the transformation is ahead of us. So when you take HR as a domain, in the past, we've taken technology and supported HR as it was. And now we're starting to think, what does it mean to focus on humans and human skills and human behaviors when we fully utilize technology? So if we can constantly train people, and we can constantly track happiness, and we can constantly facilitate communication, and if we can constantly update skills and have insight into skills and performance, how would we rethink what it means to do HR. And especially in this current crisis where people suddenly
Right.
discovered, hey, I can work from anywhere and I can communicate in different ways and I can be creative in different ways. That's when it starts. It's not when it's done. That's when it starts, because suddenly you can say,
Yeah.
all right, what does it mean to be an organization or an entity or a unit or a team? The hard questions of an organization is really, how do we organize to deliver great value? And suddenly we're
Right.
seeing that when we really examine humans in the context of technology, we can do a lot more and we can be much more flexible or much more creative with big
Yeah.
impact on pretty much everything.
So I want to say that we have a few people like watching. What one of them is Geeker, and he's saying, "Hey, so hey, Geeker, if you have any questions, you're very welcome to ask, and we'll be very happy to think about what you're thinking." So what you say is like we're in the middle of this very big crisis. If you're seeing this afterwards, we're in the middle of the COVID crisis. And as an analyst who worked at Gartner, this very big analyst company, so how would you predict this will be affecting innovation, and then how will that affect differently than other crises we've seen in the past?
Yeah, it's interesting to analyze when you're still in the middle of it. So
Right.
as the crisis is happening, I found it very interesting to see that everybody's projecting into this crisis what they already believe. So the optimists believe that this is going to be the change moment when everything will get better. The pessimists say this is the time when the governments are going to have massive ownership of technology and everything is going to go bad.
Right.
The people who are environmentalists, they believe that we will stop flying and driving cars and now we're going to save the world. So everybody is projecting into this time of turmoil everything they hope or fear. So everything I say, I'm suspicious of that it's simply a projection of my inner state rather than the analysis of the real world.
Sure.
What we see, of course, in the short term is this newfound, we can work from anywhere. And that is profound in the sense that we knew it was there, people knew it was there, and suddenly we were forced to use it. So that's interesting in two ways. One is we will discover how it means to work in an organization like that. But the second is we've discovered that the promised value of certain technologies can really be realized when we force or seduce large groups of people to do it. So there's probably other technologies out there related to security or related to finance or related to AI that would give us much bigger value if more people really started using it. So that may be a big change that we see after this crisis, that if there's potential in technology, as a society, we will jump on it more eagerly. And that can be anything. It can be from collision detection systems in cars, or it can be things that make our lives easier or safer, or things in healthcare. We're not sure what the exact technologies are, but I think as a society, we will point to this example and say, it was there, we knew it was there, and suddenly we started using it, and it turned out to be pretty great. Wouldn't this also apply for this new technology that perhaps is even operator? So I think that is over time going to be the big impact of this crisis.
Yeah, you're right. I think that you're right. One of the things that I'm doing right now is writing a book, and I just wrote about it yesterday. And the book is Harness the Wind of Change. And I talked about how did the past crisis, like let's say wars, which is a human kind of created crisis, how did that impact technology and advancements in many cases? So we know that when we are in stress, things come out of it. And when we are in these states that we have to create something, we're creating things which are very creative and original that we didn't create in the past. So in the past, like when we had wars, things were really, really fast forward in many cases, and it affected our civil lives afterwards. For example, like the radar that we created for war, then we used it, and then in a certain stage, it helped create the microwave of today, or things like, or in general, the internet was created from the defense force and from the U.S. defense.
Yeah, usually technology or new opportunities either first get made in military or in medical spaces, because that's where there's real needs. That's where they get proven and worked out. Then they go to rich people who have a lot of money who can buy them, afford them. and then they get to the common people and the regular organization. So if you
Oh.
want to look into the future, generally look for medical and military, because there's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, for now, like medical for sure is very growing. Most of the companies worldwide in most industries are taking innovation down because they're saying, okay, we're going to focus on our core values and services. We're not going to do anything like it's changing enough outside. We're not going to do anything inside. But in healthcare and in health in general, they increased it's not only the vaccine in general, we know it's very important and people are investing in it. And it was shown in the past that when we invest while in a crisis, the companies who decide to do it, although like most companies are not deciding this, they will have the advantage after the crisis.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I think there's three types of companies. So you have zombie companies that actually their business model was already shaky. They were still kind of lingering, but there was no real future in what they were offering. So if your value has decreased, cost of entry has become very low, your margins are eroding, your competitive value is gone. Those zombie companies in this crisis, they get hit, they die, nobody cares because nobody will miss them basically. Then secondly, there's companies who have a hard time, but there's a real need. So yes, we can say airlines, they have a hard time, but I bet you once this is passed, people want to go on vacation again, people want to work with people on the other side of the world, and some people want to fly there again. So there's that need. That need is not going to go away. It may change, it may become a little bit less because less business travel, but at core, there will be a need for that. And then you have companies that are doing well, that kind of thrive in this crisis, and they are using this time to also invest. So they're not just surviving and thriving, but they're actually investing right now to even accelerate further away. So you'll see that this is a time when some companies will get ahead, some companies will really die because they were already bound to. Some companies are simply hanging on, and it's those hanging on companies that sadly often cut innovation because they say we want to focus on the core, but they will discover after they've survived that they'll have a long time trying to catch up. So it's always better to at least have some breeding chamber where some ideas are cooking, and perhaps you try to be much more frugal, or perhaps you want to be much more creative, or perhaps you simply cast your net wider and start to look at startups around you rather than doing all your innovation yourself. But to stop all your innovation activities, of course, in the long term is not a smart thing.
Yeah, especially when we know everything is changing. So you have so many open opportunities out there. So because everything is changing, you have new opportunities that were not available in the past in your market. So you can just utilize it. And I think that what we start to see that the companies who were fluent with innovation in the past are not that afraid of change in general, while the companies who were not really in the core innovative, it's hard for them. We know like Amazon is investing billions of dollars right now in just to take this into the next level and make more services, more products, more solutions, so forth, because they know that there is an opportunity. And maybe traditional companies are not doing.
It's hard to, so I always have a hard time generalizing across companies, because what's good for one company is not necessarily good for another. And the embrace of technology can also kind of lead you astray, that you say, oh, everybody's doing this, I should do this as well. But it's really about the conversation with your clients of where are they going, what are their needs, and how can we best serve that. And when you introduce the technology dimension, sometimes that gets a dynamic of its own, and then suddenly people are running around buying software, talking to vendors, going to conferences left and right, looking at hypes and saying, oh, this is the new hype, we should now also do IoT into all our devices, and we should also do AI into all our, and we should be watching for neurotechnology and quantum computing. Yes, you should, but please don't lose your customer out of sight.
I think that it all starts from the customers, but once you are already connected to them and maybe focused on them, you know that their needs are changing. So you go and get them involved in what you're creating. You're not going from the technology, as we said in the past, and then say, how can we build something for them? You go to them and see what's changing in your perspective and in your life and in the way you perceive us as a company, and you perceive what you're
Yeah.
doing differently. And then we create something for you. And sometimes it could be with AI, and sometimes not.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's this is the thing, and I'm afraid in innovation, it's kind of a no-brainer. So people who listen to this, they think, yeah. Listen to the customer. That's where the value gets created. Yeah, we all heard that. And yet, the number of times you talk to real organizations and you ask them, have you asked the customer? They will make up excuses why they haven't. No, we're
Yeah.
not in that stage yet. No, we're trying to set up something new. No, we're just going to build a consultancy organization and it sounds really great, so we're just going to do it. Even that, if you want to set up a new service, talk to your customers. If you want to bring a change to how you do your invoicing, talk to your customers. If you want to create a new app, even though you believe it's going to be wonderful, talk to your customers.
Right.
And every time, so if you're listening to this and you're in a project and you haven't talked to a customer of that project, that's your number one thing. I don't care what you are. You're a project lead or a developer. You should know what the customer needs and wants in that project, because otherwise it's just not gonna work.
Yeah, I think that a few of the live shows that we've done in the past is like connected to people talking about co-creation, and one of them talked about the fact that we don't need to talk to users in the beginning and once we have an MVP. It's like 2 points. In the beginning, we're really listening, and in the end, we just want to show them, and then let's see, yeah, that's exactly what I want. It's like 2 points that we're addressing that. And in general, if we talk to them more and more, even while we're thinking and while we have something which is not mature and not final, we get more of it. Many companies think maybe they will not look good if they don't show something which is final. Maybe it's connected to the legal saying not showing it to others, or maybe it's connected to the fact that themselves don't want to show something which is like, we showed it, but we didn't get the right answers because they didn't understand that we have a vision, and in the end it will be better, like so forth. But once you're understanding that innovation is like trial and error, not only in the whole project, but what you're doing is like investigating a new thing. And if it's new, you don't know.
Yeah,
so if
but
you don't know, you need to ask.
It can be much more human. It can simply be that you believe in the idea and you're a little bit afraid that your customer is not going to buy it. And you think, if I can just get this thing built, then they will see it. So I don't want to talk to you about this idea. I just want to show you the real finished thing. And that's basically that's the trap.
Right.
Because if you're a little bit afraid of it, that should be your first thing. So find your fears and validate them. So are you afraid it's not going to work? All right, test that. Are you afraid nobody's going to like it? All right, test that. Are you afraid none of your current customers are even interested in this? Oh, well, go talk to them.
Yeah, it's better to know it in advance, of course, as fast as possible. But what you're talking about is fear. And I think that fear is something so prominent these days when everything is changing and people are reacting with fear. So what do you think is the biggest challenges leaders have today in this very big crisis?
Yeah, so today it's, we when you look at an organization, you say, in great organizations, people are agile and they respond to change. And they are creative in problem solving or in wowing the customer. And for that, we have delegated leadership, and we want to have a lot of bottom-up initiatives. And we want to give people freedom with clear boundaries. This is kind of the philosophy of management in the modern age. Right. And then in times of crisis, all of that breaks because everybody becomes afraid of their job. So people want to have certainty. What should I do, and how do I make sure I don't get fired? And managers suddenly get worried because, well, their numbers need to be reduced, and so they need more reporting, and that means more certainty. So suddenly, all this dynamism and all this agility is kind of unwanted. So we don't want agile stuff. We want clear and predictable and no risk, and everybody do what they're told. and that kills creativity and it kills happiness, and it kind of kills all your messaging as well. So if for the past 5 years you've said we want you to be entrepreneurial and we want you to be open and we want you to be collaborative, and now comes crisis and we pull in the reins and we say, no, you can't do that, and no, please only do this, and please spend only time on your core thing, and then it's like all the messages from the past 5 years are suddenly fake. It's like, all right. So, and this is then when, as an organization, you should have the emotional maturity to have open conversations about that, to say, look, this is what we're in, this is what we're facing, this is why we're doing it, and that has an effect, but it's temporary, and this is what's still here, and this is what's not here. And that, I think that is the biggest challenge, because we have leaders, organizations have a hard time choosing situational leaders. So once you're the boss of something, you're the boss. And if suddenly there's a crisis, it's not as if we swap out bosses immediately. Usually we wait too long, and then we say, well, all right, you're not performing well. No, well, you hired me for a different age. So
yeah. You know, it reminds me of a caricature I saw yesterday about innovation. And it's like someone on stage, and there is a very big crowd, and he's saying, who wants innovation? And everybody's like, wow. And then who wants to innovate? And then like a few of them.
Yeah, who wants change? Usually the thing.
And then he asks, who is willing to fail? And then they're all go on. So it's the same thing. Like it's a complex thing.
And I think the thing there is, in innovation, we can talk about the word innovation a long time, but innovation is empty. It doesn't tell me what you're doing. And I often say, it's like asking your 17-year-old son, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, well, I want to be rich, happy, and healthy. And you have no idea, because it doesn't help you select what you're going to study or what kind of job. Rich, happy, and healthy, everybody wants that. So innovation, of course, everybody wants that. So you need to put profile on that. And that means, that's why we have conversations today, is what does it mean to be us as an organization? What is the essence? What's our story? And storytelling sounds like a vague term, but it's really that they are the things, the values that people collaborate on. And I think that's where we're headed. So in this time, the stories that we tell should still be the stories that we believe in as an organization, even though we're going through hard times.
Yeah. So stories is one of the way that you could, as a business, as a company, try to make better, like take this crisis and handle it. What do you think is the most powerful way to overcome this crisis? What if a leader would come to you, what would you answer?
I think it's to be very clear on how decisions are being made. So because people are looking for certainty, and sometimes there is no certainty. In times of crisis, we cannot predict things, but we can predict how we make decisions. So you can say things like, as long as our revenue is this, nobody will get fired. But as soon as our revenue drops below that, that's when we have to fire people. And this is how it's going to go. And this is what we're going to track. And this is how we're going to make that decision. So that you kind of know, all right, we're good for now. And I can perform and I can work in that context really well. And innovation, the same goes, is to say, well, we will not spend endless amounts of money on innovation, but these 5 ideas will go through the next 3 sprints. We will fund the next 3 sprints. And if in those sprints we've discovered this kind of feedback or we've hit these type of numbers, then you requalify for the next 3 sprints or something like that. Then you're not predicting much, but you're making decisions. You're kind of broadcasting how you're going to make decisions, and usually with that also who is going to make the decision. So it makes it more transparent to the people. Yeah, but it also gives people a role. So are you the owner of the decision, or are you an advisor in that decision, or are you simply being told? And that also gives kind of freedom. If you're simply being told a decision, well, all right, you may like it or not, but at least you know what's there. So it's not on your shoulders to think about it too much.
I see what
you don't like it, you can leave. That's often how it works.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So could you give us like an example? What would be a good use case of the clients you work with, and how innovation worked for them, and what are you proud of in this sense?
So what I like, so a case I like is an innovation a director who was working for a CIO who came to me and said, I have a hard time getting my company to innovate because they were cutting money, they were cutting funding, times are hard. And he was proud of his job. And he said, I always see what needs to happen. And I always see where the trends in technology are going. And I always see where the opportunities are. But somehow I can't get them sold to the organization. So somehow between seeing it and knowing it and really getting the revenue of it, it broke down. And so he was examining the processes. And the processes seemed to be okay. He was examining the people. And that seemed to be okay as well. And then he examined funding, and funding seemed to be available as long as people were convinced. And so in talking to him, I noticed something, and it turned out that he came out of technology, and every conversation he had ended up being about technology. So this director of innovation, although he had good views and good vision and a good network, he himself was not the right tool in the right place. So he himself was making every conversation about technology and not about value and customers and brand and experience. So he had the passion, he understood what needed to happen, except his own way of interfacing with the world was way too technical.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens very often with innovation. If you examine the systemic problems in innovation, it's very often about leadership and personalities, much more than about process. So you can download an innovation process, a funnel or stage gates or cycles, find scaled agile frameworks, do business canvas, all great. And still you can do all that and find out that it doesn't work. Why? Because it's the people driving it that make it successful. And so you have to examine who are driving it. Are they good storytellers? Are they empathic? Do they use the right language? Do they have the view of we're going to create real value? Or are they just in there to earn money? As a great driver, it doesn't create real solutions. So if you look at startups, that's the kind of inspiration you're looking for, is the startup founders that you talk to. If they're stuck with their head in technology, you're saying, well, you might get, but if you have somebody who's running a startup who really believes they're helping real people or real businesses, that's when you start to believe. That's when you think, oh yeah, this is really going to work. And that's what you look for organizations. So
how did you help him? How did you help him?
So that's the thing, is once you discover, hey, you this is what you do, then you can coach someone and say, all right, think about your language, think about the topics that you're willing to talk about and not. So I don't want to talk about platform decisions. I delegate that to an architect and say, okay, I don't care. Of course, I may care, but visually to the world, I don't care. If I talk to somebody from the business, I choose my locations. Where do I meet these people? Do I meet them in the IT department next to all the computer programmers? Or do I meet them at the boardroom where people in suits talk about strategy? Of course, I go there rather than invite them to my techie office sort of below the stairs.
Yeah.
It's by changing the context, changing the content, changing the language, sometimes even changing your appearance. You can really influence what you as a person look like. And of course, this is very situational. But what I like about this is that in technology and innovation, we find a lot of people who think that it's a very instrumented system where you push buttons and you pull levers. And that's when change happens. And I think we know that drill. We can build technology, and with agile teams and DevOps teams, we can do really great things to make technology. But if you examine why innovation doesn't or does work in organizations, it's very often that. It's leadership, storytelling, decision-making. And that's when you walk headfirst into culture and behavior. And that's very interesting. If you ask an organization, innovation is important. Yes. And you ask, what are you doing? Well, we have process and we have money and we have technology. And you say, and what are you doing about people? They say, well,
we hope people will go into the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
it's again like going back to what we started with, that it's all about the people. It's not about the system or the process or the technology, as most people think. Like when they're asked about what is like the most innovative companies in the world, they have technology. Google has technology. They know how to do search. No, they're innovative because they know how to make people more innovative and creative, and to leverage their capabilities and skills, and not only the way they're coding. Like they,
yeah,
for example, they have this 20% that you do whatever you want, or there are other places they have like innovation labs, and they can take these people and really nurture them in order to do so. And people are more it's not only the numbers that counts, or the numbers is connected to the way that you innovate, and not only the money that you're making for the company,
yeah.
so forth.
Well, I always like I had to smile because you said the most innovative companies, and I always say that's you can only prove that after a little while. You can look back and say which are the companies that were most successful over time, because those turned out to be the most innovative companies. Because
Right.
innovation should be visible in results. If there's no results, it's not innovation. So we can fiddle with technology, and we can do a lot of branding and advertising, and pump out Google Glasses all we want, but until it really solidifies into some kind of success, it wasn't real innovation. There may be ideas and there may be technology discoveries, but the innovation is actually the delivery value, and that's also what all the activities should be aimed for. So even in today's crisis, we could say innovation is open-ended and it's about brainstorming and blue sky thinking, but it can also be these are the results we need. Let's go measure and let's go see. So then we do want to blend back in numbers and results to this much more open-ended creative process of innovation.
Yeah, I totally agree. But when what I try to say about innovative companies, and it's connected to the branding, and most of them are B2C companies in some of the senses, and then they are more known. These like four big companies, and there are very innovative companies that are not that known, and therefore they are not in the ranks in the same
Yep.
way. But I think that what it means that it's systematic innovation. They're doing more and more, and some of them are working and some of them are not. Some of the
Yep.
processes are successful and some of them are failing, but you learn from it for the next time and the next time. And because they're doing so much of it, they have a percentage which is very successful, and then they create more services and more companies and more
Yep.
products and so forth. So it's like a
Yep.
creation all of the time. And one
Yeah.
more
And
thing that,
yeah.
that is connected just a minute is that everybody's innovating. It's not
Yep.
like this
Exactly.
is the innovation
Yep.
the department, so forth.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at organizational design, first we had an organization that simply made stuff. So all carpenters and builders, they would just make stuff, and then we started to pull out separate entities. Management became different, and then security and governance was different, and then enterprise architects were different, and then finance is different. And so we separate out all these functions, and now we're saying, oh, look, all these functions lead to tension inside organizations. And when you look at technology, we see this all the time, is we have the people who make the technology, and then we have the testers who are outside for some reason, doesn't make a lot of sense. And then we have the security people who are outside for some reason, doesn't make sense either. And then we have the architects and the infrastructure people, and all of them start to fight with each other because they all have their own little island that they're trying to optimize. And now we're saying, no, that doesn't make sense. We should all have one goal, which is deliver something to our customers. And that's where DevOps or biz DevOps or whatever you want to call it today is to reunite on the main goals and say we all share things. And that's what innovation is also about, is to not pull innovation out and say innovation happens in this little corner, but innovation happens everywhere, to the extent that it's needed and wanted in different areas. So that means we have to have a portfolio view of our business and accelerate where the opportunities are and slow down where we think there's no opportunities. Because it doesn't make sense if you're, I don't know, in the back end of a mortgage system, you don't want to spend too much money on innovation just on that, because perhaps there's no money to be made there. You could create the best back end system for a mortgage and still be fully commodity, while perhaps in peer-to-peer AI-backed Bitcoin trading, perhaps there's a lot of money to be made. So then we want to basically spend our innovation time and effort there rather than there. And that view doesn't exist a lot inside organizations yet. So, but still.
Yeah, especially now. Like now, it's going like a few steps back. But I think it's gonna go much further and faster, and like in maybe a year or two, when companies understand that they need to go back into that's the reality. Realities change, and even a very fast change as we see. So we need to go and catch our clients, to catch the needs, the opportunities. We need to go there and do it even further. So we're almost.
And this is what you see. Take the pain today, write off what you can write off, throw away old stuff that you're no longer using, get ready for what comes next.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. So we're almost done. Is there any like a small tip that you would like to give someone who is like thinking about creating a change within this specific crisis, or a small tip that you would give leaders?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to think about going forward is even if you want to change systemic things like innovation or change or governance, take a very specific example and use that to wedge your way through the change. So if you want to do better innovation, just work through the process. Go find a really good idea. Go find real good interaction with your customers. Go fund the first sprint or discovery of that. Go make the first MVP, all the while examining how your system responds to it. How does the organization respond to a great idea? How does the organization respond to requests for funding? How does the organization decide to fund an MVP? How does the organization embrace an MVP and turn it into a real product? Examine that, use it as a tool for change. So don't build systems for systems, don't build platforms for platforms, go for the real thing. And then you'll discover that brings change a lot faster than doing systemic changes. So, and that goes for pretty much every level.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what I'm building right now with this program, exactly as you said, like, and the Invincible Innovation Program is exactly that. Take what you have right now, talk to your clients, understand where they stand, understand your market, and create something out of it and try to sell it to the C-level from pitching and so forth. So I wanted to thank you very much. Oh, one last thing before I go. Like, if somebody wants to connect with you, where is the best place to do that?
Obvious answer, find me on LinkedIn, Erik Van Ommeren, easy to find. Feel free to hook up, send me a message. I'm always happy to have an open conversation without specific goal, because I'm inspired and triggered by new ideas and new viewpoints. So even if I said things that you very disagree with, please let me know, because that usually gives for the best conversations. So feel free to reach out. Right. And thank you for putting this together. I greatly appreciate what you've done, and I think this is going to be a great series. So
I really do hope. It's been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed being with you and talking to you, and it's always like every conversation, it makes me think again about maybe some of the stuff maybe I could see it differently, and it's always growing. You know, we're growing, and especially in this crisis, you could either be fearful or curious, and I want to be curious, and you help me with it. So I really want to thank you for that, and everyone for joining us. Thank you for being with us, and see you next time in our next show. So thank you.